Morning, Beaks. It's been a while since we had a video because we didn't really have anything to report. We have had a number of deliveries which we've shown you, and we haven't had anything since, although there are a few things waiting for collection at the post office. So we'll do a bit of video on those items this coming week. Nothing too exciting, unfortunately. The bikes, as far as we know, are still in Berlin and still on the production line. We have ordered a large number of items to be fitted to the bikes, but we won't be doing that. We will allow Moto Adelaide to get on with that, and then that will leave us just a couple of things perhaps, such as the frames for the pannier racks and possibly whatever else we can find that we think we need to fit once the bikes actually arrive. So I wanted to talk to you about what we have been up to, and we've been designing away with some t-shirt logos and some designs for t-shirts. We've got a beanie out there, and we've done a few mugs. And while we were doing those designs, we were also doing some badge designs which will go on each of the videos as we start the tour for the route. So we've come up with
and t-shirts
and stickers maybe, and maybe some more mugs or whatever you think we should do. We've come up with the basic route. It's pretty fluid, and it depends on other things which might be happening in the world and when the bikes are delivered. Once we've run them in, the time it takes to actually get them to the shipping location, which we think at this stage is going to be Melbourne, and shipping out to, at this stage, the UK. That's where we think that the shipping agent is going to ship the motorcycles. But things change, so it's kind of these are the plans at the moment. However, we're
flexible.
We're flexible, and we've just got to go with what's happening in the world, locations in the world, political activities, where people think is safe, and etc. I'm sure you all know what's happening at the moment. However, we've come up with a plan, a rough plan, and timings, etc. Well, we're at the mercy of the shipping company. Once the bikes get on the ship, we believe they're going via Singapore to the UK. What we'll do in the meanwhile, we don't know. Again, we want to get the flights booked. However, we don't want to book too early because the bikes might be delayed, and we don't want to leave it till last minute because that's when it gets really expensive. Again, it's
Yeah, the other issue, of course, is the planning of the routes we're looking to do and the time of year. Glynis has been very good at sort of looking at planning and projecting what is necessary. So we've got to take that into account as well. So we've got a rough idea because of the climate at the time, the time of year, and where we want to go. So, and we've got also the extra problem of, shall we call it, the visas that are necessary. The amount of time we're allowed to be in Europe and be out of Europe. We've only got a 3-month period. So it's all a bit like a game of chess, really. Everything's got to slot into its right place at the right time. So we've come up with a sort of a rough guide, if you like, as to what we're thinking we should be looking to do. So we're going
to start obviously in the UK once we get the motorcycles out of the crates or off the whatever they're going to be delivered on. There's a bit of I don't quite know what the background is for the shipping agent, because we've looked at the paperwork, and we've also got another one to investigate as well, which we don't know whether it's the same company or slightly different. We've just been given a hint as to there's another company we might be able to use. But the information we have at the moment is that the bikes will arrive by ship. We assume it's going to be somewhere like Portsmouth or Southampton. We don't really know. But the collection point for the agent that we're dealing with at the moment is the collection is from Heathrow. Now, is that something to do with customs and excise? We don't know. But we're just, at the moment, we're just in discovery mode, and we don't actually know the fine details of it until we, pay the money and sign the contracts and fill in the paperwork and pay for the insurance and all of the rest of it. So, but the bikes will arrive in the UK. From that point, we will see, because of the time of year we're expecting to go, which is we're expecting the bikes will start shipping possibly mid-November, end of November. They're likely to be on the high seas for all of December. And that's all we can do as far as planning is concerned for that part, because we just don't have enough information at the moment.
But there is one other thing there to throw into the mix. The bikes will be on a ship, probably 8, maybe 10, maybe 12 weeks, we don't know. And then we'll be free to do stuff. So what we're looking to do is to perhaps, while the bikes are being shipped, we can get somewhere to do a biking trip through hired bikes. So we're considering some unfinished business we've got with India. We want to do that. So that's maybe a time we can look to go to India, do some touring there with hired bikes, and then meet up with our bikes once it's all finished there.
Which is one option. A good option as well, because winter time in India is the best time to go because it's not extraordinarily hot. It's still warmish, but it's also the dry season. So that's a good time to go back to India. So that's a really good part of the planning. But once we get to the UK, we've got family in the UK. We may make arrangements for a quick visit, or they may come down to us. But because it's going to be December, January, it's going to be extremely cold. So the idea is that we will then head south, probably not by road through France. I'm not a fan of France, so I can quite happily bypass it. I think Chris is less objectionable to France, but perhaps we'll put it on a ferry and we'll put it on a ferry and we'll get the ferry to Spain with the bikes, and then we will start the road element and head down towards Cadiz, that area, getting a ferry across to Tenerife. And explore Tenerife for however long it takes. Again, we're guessing when it comes to timings, because it's kind of once you've seen it, and then it's time to leave. So we know that we've got 3 months maximum in Europe to start with. So we're going to concentrate, because it's the winter months, across the bottom. That is Tenerife, possibly moving then across through the bottom of Spain to Barcelona. And it's a ferry point, I think, for where are we coming out at?
Well, that should take us over to do Corsica, Sardinia, Sicily, the islands there.
So that's an island trek to start with. So Tenerife.
Island, not Ireland.
Islands trek for Tenerife, Corsica, Sardinia, Sicily, and then onto mainland Italy.
Italy, yeah.
And what happens after that, if we're coming up to close to the 3 months, then effectively it's up one side of Italy, probably the west coast of Italy, and head back towards the UK. Somehow, whether we go back to the top of Spain and get the ferry is to be decided.
Or through France to get the tunnel.
Or not through France. But who knows? We could make, because we've got to think about the weather, how cold it is, where it's snowing. High altitudes are going to be close to us. So it's not the time of year to be doing the Swiss passes. So we're going to have to basically hug the coastline for some of it and then work our way up somehow. So because we're restricted even though we're dual citizens of Australia and the UK, we're still under the same restrictions as anyone else that's visiting Europe who is not a resident of Europe, which is the 3 months maximum in the Schengen area, the 90-day rule. So 90 days out of 180, and then once you've done the 180, you can go back into Europe. So that's the plan. We've then got 90 days, 3 months in effect, in the UK. So if we've done January, February, March, doing the islands and south of Europe, that gives us April, May and June floating around the UK. And some of the planning is to do...
Well, we're wanting to see family, we want to see friends, so that we'd organise that. But my thought on it is perhaps we'll look to do... I've never ever been to the Isle of Man, and I'd love to go over and just ride around quietly on the circuit. I mean, adventure bikes aren't really the sort of thing to be racing around on. So I'd like to go around the Isle of Man, see that and what they've got to offer, and then we can get ferry across to the south of Ireland, and then do completely the whole of Ireland. And once we've done that, we can then get a ferry across and join the mainland again, probably up in Scotland, and then we can work through Scotland and work down accordingly. And I think that would give us plenty of time to do all that before we consider the next period.
So that's 3 months in Southern Europe, 3 months in UK, broadly in UK, including Ireland. And then that will take us to the end of June. So then we're looking at July, August and September, which would be the next 90 days back in Europe. So it's like you get out of jail card, if you like. This Schengen area thing is new to us. We never even considered it in the past. But then I suppose we've never considered doing 3 months in Europe anyway. But by then, at that time of year, July, August and September, it's going to be summer, and probably the best time to have a crack at Scandinavia. So again, how we get from the UK to Scandinavia is debatable, although I would like to go across the Malmö Bridge. So I would like to go from Copenhagen into Sweden that way, rather than to take a ferry direct to somewhere like Bergen. So that means that we'll go via ferry from the UK to somewhere like Harwich maybe, which goes into Rotterdam. So and work our way across to Copenhagen and go across the Malmö Bridge, just because it's there, and I've never actually been across it, either in a car or on a motorcycle. So, and then that puts us in Sweden, and we can start making our way across the coast to Norway, to spend a considerable amount of time in Norway, going up the west coast, going across all of those ferries, right up to the top, to the Nordkap. And we think that that's going to be the best time of year to do it. It will still be cold, because it's pretty cold up near the Arctic Circle. But this is going to be our best opportunity, our only opportunity in trying to work the timings out for where we need to be for that area.
Yeah.
So from the Nordkap, we then come down. We haven't worked out the routes yet. We're just looking at what other people have done on YouTube. But we'll cross sort of at some point into Finland, and come down to Helsinki, and spend some time in Finland. I've never been to Finland before, ever. I've touched with work the bottom of Norway and the bottom of Sweden, but it's just the big cities. So we'll come across. From Helsinki, we'll get a ferry across to Tallinn in Estonia, and so then we're hitting the Baltic states. The Baltic states are
Latvia, Lithuania.
and Estonia. So they'll be the Baltic states.
I think the other important thing is, like you've said, we're looking at, so whilst we haven't planned out the exact routes of anything, we're looking at the rough regional areas we want to travel in. It's not so much we've looked at what other people have done so that we can follow what they're doing, but also be able to maybe eliminate some of the things where we can do something different. Maybe go somewhere different, and that will be nice, so that people can sit down in their lounges and watch on YouTube where these people are going and what they're seeing and what they're doing. And there's times when we've watched and we've seen them go to the same place other people have gone to. Well, that's sort of fine, but that's revisiting, if you like, in your lounge, revisiting these places. It might be nice then to see where they're going, to maybe mix and match the routes to suit ourselves and to suit our viewers.
And also, we're sort of at the stage of our life where being in a tent is not the plan. And I think both of us, well, certainly I have through my life done a lot in a tent, and the thought
And
of
camping
and sort of having to stop somewhere, stick up a tent for a night, and then pack it all up the next morning and move on. I want to try and get away from that in this trip. And also, when you're younger, it's easier to do. You're not concentrating so much on timings, and you're not so tired. But as you get older, you're trying to do this as comfortably as possible, but also as cheaply as possible. So it's not as though we're trying to find 5-star hotels. No chance. We're trying to do this as cheaply as possible because everybody's got a budget, including us, and we've got to try and stick to that budget as much as possible. We know that there's going to be expensive locations, and hopefully we can supplement that with cheaper locations. We don't want to be staying in rat holes either. So we do want somewhere that's got a clean bed and a decent bathroom, but we don't want to be trekking across campsites for, washing and toilet blocks and all of the rest of it.
We've also with our expenses, etc., we've got to look very much carefully also to the fact that we've got initial costs of shipping involved, where other people in the UK start in the UK. We've got 2 bikes and equipment to get across to the UK to even start with. So we have got probably, to a certain degree, greater expense in that regard. So we're looking at that, and so therefore we're looking at doing it not camping wise, but looking to decent accommodation. Let's be fair, it's lovely to go on a holiday for a week or 2 weeks or whatever, and go to a beautiful 4, 5-star, 6-star hotel and have fun and all the rest of it. But to do that every day is it's not necessary when you're on a long-term project.
And it's impossible unless you're a lottery winner.
Yeah, that's right. And we're looking at not just doing Europe. We are doing all of Europe, but we want to extend beyond that, and that's something we can come into information in perhaps in a few minutes. We can explain where we're going with that. But yeah.
So from the Baltic states, we're going to go down to the Visegrad group, which is Poland, Slovakia, Hungary, and Czechia. And one thing, there's a couple of things that we might like to see in a lot of different countries. Probably not the norm for most people. We're not particularly, we're of an age where we've already seen quite a lot. And whilst cities can be spectacular, a city is a city. It's probably the centre of business. It's the main location for most of the population in a lot of cases, and it's busy. So we're not really, if we have to pass through a city, no problem at all. We've both ridden through London and places like that, and busy cities around Australia, and we have some busy cities in this country. but it's not the highlight of our trip. I think what we both like is countryside, scenery, and wildlife. They're the things which attract us. Now, Chris is very interested in military history, and which is great. But when it comes down to places like Poland, for example, or Germany, in fact, or Austria for that matter, I think whilst they're making some tourist attractions out of places like ex-concentration camps, which are still going, and well, you can't really call them memorable, but I suppose they are memorable places from World War One and World War Two. I think some of those things would be so deeply upsetting that I just couldn't step foot in some of them. And some of those places I don't believe should be tourist attractions as such. So, but that's my personal opinion. There may be one or two interesting sites that we'd like to go
Castle.
to.
I'd love to go to Colditz Castle.
Colditz Castle
I've read
might
everything
be one.
there is to read about Colditz. Stalag Luft 3.
So that might be that might be an interesting stop. But when it comes to sort of locations for ex-Holocaust areas, for example, I just don't think I could emotionally stand the trauma of it. And we're sort of doing this as a happy point in our life. This is a massive adventure. We've done plenty of adventures before, but this is a real massive adventure in our life, and we want it to be exciting and memorable for all of the right reasons, so that you get a lot out of it and we get a lot out of it as well. So coming through the Poland, Slovakia, Hungary and Czechia, I've never been to any of those.
No, not me.
And then we're then dropping down from what we're calling the leg of the trip is peaks to port. So depending on how much time we've spent in Scandinavia and then coming down through those countries, it should put us somewhere near Austria, Italy. And then we're thinking of getting across to Morocco for a non-Schengen area month. So we've got to pass through Austria, Italy, Switzerland, possibly France, Spain and Gibraltar, and going from Gibraltar into Morocco. Now, timings will dictate, how many days we've got to do that and what it is that we see. But it'll be at the right time of year, because hopefully we'll be well into September by then. So we can do some of those glorious Swiss passes and Italian passes. Some of the most famous ones, I'm sure you know. I won't name them here. But again,
You've got to do them.
how many we actually get around to doing will depend on the timing. Because once we get into Morocco, we've got to keep something like a week of the 90 days for the Schengen, so that we can cross back through the...
Travel up to get the ferry or whatever back to the UK. To get out of the Schengen area, because that's where we're going to. UK is where we'll base ourselves again for the out period.
Yes. So we'll be hopefully in the UK November, December. The timings to go back into Europe are not quite as important, because we're not intending to go back into Europe after what would be a couple of months in the UK. Now we're looking at winter months. So November, December, we want to get around some old haunts or do some things that we used to do in the past, such as go to the NEC motorcycle show at Birmingham. That would be good to catch up with that, see how it's grown, and see what's on the books for new bikes. But also, just as you do, to mooch around, motorcycle shows is really good fun, and we loved it. And it's something we just don't have in Australia. We don't have anything which resembles the large number of motorcycle shows and events that they have in the UK, and nor do we have biker cafes. And you know how yourselves as motorbike riders, just how many motorbike cafes and stops there are to go to in the UK, some of which we've never experienced, such as the Bike Shed in London. And then there are a lot of old haunts that we used to go to, such as Squire's Cafe, just outside of Leeds. So there are places that we want to go back to, but and places that we haven't been to. And I do think that a lot of the time in the UK, apart from looking up friends and family, will be just trolling around those biker haunts again, bearing in mind it's when we are in the UK, it's going to be relatively cool.
Yeah, and hopefully we'll be able to meet up with one or two people that we were friends with or whatever in the past, and be able to have ride outs to some of these haunts. Some of them aren't so well publicised, and some are. I mean, you've got, like we lived in Lincolnshire, Willingham Woods. If anybody knows of Willingham Woods, that was always a good little place to go and have a cuppa and a chat and see a good fistful of bikes. I think it's probably the same still now, and that'll be nice to go back and probably maybe even see one or two people we know there.
There's a couple of places that we do want to revisit which are not bike related, such as Duxford.
Yes.
I don't think there's ever a time where we wouldn't go back to Duxford, because it's just a spectacular museum.
That's where I first went up in Tiger Moth. That was good fun. I'll do that again. Yeah, I mean, especially as I can fly small aircraft.
Some of you might be wondering why we're not actually just going over there, and because we're dual citizens, purchasing bikes in the UK, and using that as the starting and the ending point for the trip. And I've investigated long and hard about purchasing 2 BMWs in the UK. We don't have a UK address, and whilst we could use my son's address, location and storage, etc., to get the bikes and fit them up and put everything on them, unfortunately we can't get the insurance. Now, I have seen a number of people who have done this. They've purchased the motorcycle in the UK and effectively they've lied or tried to work around getting UK insurance, which would allow them to travel into Europe as well, well, most of Europe. And they can get also accident and recovery included in that. But we know from experience that insurance companies don't always play ball. And sometimes it can be, what we don't want to do is purchase 2 expensive bikes and lose all of that money because something has happened. One of them or both of them have been stolen, or worse, there's been some form of an accident, and we find that the insurance that we've got as non-UK citizens is null and void because effectively we didn't say that we weren't residents, or the insurance promised to us as non-residents isn't actually valid. It's too much of a risk when you're looking at around about 50,000 Australian dollars for 2 bikes which have been fitted out with all of the luggage and accessories.
Yeah, plus the expense of hiring bikes for the period of time we're looking at. I mean, you're looking at...
Well, yeah, 12 months.
Minimum. So, you know, it's just financially not viable to go renting. And you equally have the problem of, let's go and buy some second-hand bikes or, you know, whatever. You still got the same issues. So that's not even viable for us to consider. Yeah, so yeah.
Right, so what are we going to do once we have basically said goodbye to the UK? Well, again, we've been in touch with shipping agents, and their advice is that it's just as cost effective to fly bikes as it is to ship them to the United States. Again, we're going to be arriving in the United States in winter, so possibly January, February time. So we've got less restrictions, of course. The United States is the United States. You can spend as much time flying around each individual state as you want. But the restriction is, as it is in the UK, the maximum amount of time you can spend, the motorcycle can spend in the UK is a consideration, as well as the maximum amount of time we can spend in the United States as a consideration. So it's mostly about the bikes. In the UK, the bike can be in the country for 6 months maximum before it has to be registered with the DVLA, which is the Australian Rego equivalent, if you like. After that time, it has to be registered as a foreign vehicle which has entered the UK temporarily. So there's that restriction to think about, and it won't affect us because we're 3 months in, 3 months out, 3 months in, and then out. But the United States is roughly the same, except it's 12 months, I believe, for the motorcycle, but it's not 12 months for us. And we can, I think, get 90 days to start with, which can be extended to 6 months. Or so, if I've got that wrong, it could be 6 months, which can be extended to 12. We know that it can be extended to 12 months, and we'll be applying for that extension if we need to. We think because the United States is massive. It's a different story when if we were sort of hopping in and out of Canada and the United States. But the problem there is that we would need a carnet de passage to take the bike, an Australian registered bike, from the USA into Canada. Now, that's very expensive here in Australia. It's something around the region of $1,800. And whilst you would think you would get most of that back, actually you don't. It's around about $300 to $500 that you would get back. So it depends on what the attraction is in Canada that we haven't seen before. And both of us have been to Ontario, Niagara, Toronto. I've been to Montreal and Ottawa, and we've both been across on the west side to Vancouver. So whilst it would be quite romantic to be able to trip over into Canada, it may be cost prohibitive. And it's a lot of money, sort of $3,500.
And not to do that much.
$3,500 just for a piece of paper in order to get across the border is a big expense. So we on this occasion, we'd probably not be taking the BMWs across the border. Whether we choose to go across the border and hire a couple of bikes for a couple of days, who knows? Once we get there, we might make that decision. But the lower 49 states, or 48 states, if you don't include Hawaii, which would be another really long ferry ride.
Get pedaling.
So the lower 48 would, they're the ones that we're looking at. Even though I've been to a lot of them with work, and Chris has been to quite a few, there are some places that we'd like to go back to, and some places that I'd like to show Chris, including Chicago and the Great Lakes, from the US side. And then I'd like to certainly do a trip across the top, which the Dakotas, Idaho, Montana, Wyoming, Washington State. So I'd definitely like to do that. But we're arriving in winter, which means we've got to be in the south and do a lot of the south.
For the first 3 months.
For the first 3 months. So we've definitely done California, Nevada, Arizona, New Mexico before, but they're very attractive and really, really gorgeous states. So we'd definitely like to ride through them again.
We don't want to be rushing through them either, hence why we say southern states for January, February, March. I think that will give us a good stretch of time to do the bottom.
And then we've got friends in the northeast, so we definitely ride up the east coast to around about the New York, Boston area, and then get across Detroit, Chicago, Milwaukee, and Montana, Wyoming. So that would see another three months out, and then we'll take stock of exactly where we are and if we've got any money left at this point. And then...
Or if we're still talking.
If we're still talking. And everything is all right, we can apply for another 6 months, I think. And see how much more we want to see and stay there. But ultimately, we do want to ship the bikes from the US West Coast to New Zealand, which is then coming closer to our home turf. Now, New Zealand under normal circumstances also requires a carnet de passage, but because the bikes are registered in Australia and there is a close relationship between Australia and New Zealand, it's something I've really got to dig into really deeply to make sure that we don't have to provide a carnet de passage, but we believe that we don't, although if anybody out there with any knowledge, having shipped an Australian registered bike from another country, the United States, to New Zealand, even though they're registered in Australia, if anybody's got any information out there on that issue, we don't want to arrive in New Zealand and then find that we've got to apply for a carnet de passage in Australia before they will allow them out of the dock. So I mean, I'll do an awful lot more research, but if anybody can kind of cut that process short, someone who's done it already, then that would be a good help to both of us. Yeah, obviously it's a long way away, but
yeah, we actually have been North and South Island of New Zealand before, but that was in a car and doing holiday period there. The Southern Island was exceptional for biking, really was, and we said then we've got to come back here. This is what we think is our best idea, is to ship to New Zealand before coming back to Australia. However, yet again, like with the initial shipping from Australia to the UK, it's going to be a US to New Zealand shipping. It's going to take quite a number of weeks, like we did organise, or we're organising to do, hopefully, the India rental biking trip. Over that period, we can look to consider doing a hiring of vehicles to go somewhere and hire vehicles over that shipping period to New Zealand. And we think it may be something like Thailand, or even Sri Lanka or something, including Sri Lanka, etc. We can consider doing that. So that might be an option while the bikes are tied up in a shipping container. That'll give us a chance to do and see somewhere else, and then meet up with our bikes in New Zealand. Yeah, that'll be good.
Yeah, so obviously we don't know anything about the shipping times as yet because we haven't got that far with the planning, but it will go onto a container ship somewhere, either up at the top at Seattle or down at the bottom, Los Angeles, San Diego area, maybe even San Francisco, and they'll come across to New Zealand. However, I'm hoping it's going to be a shorter period of time, but I'm certain it won't be. It'll be just as long when you think of the distance between the west coast of the United States and New Zealand, which is right at the bottom southeast tip of Australia. So, but we can't miss it out. This is the opportunity we've got to ship to New Zealand, and we're both really, really, really looking forward to that. I'm sure we will still be fit and healthy by then. And then after we don't have any timings for New Zealand, we'll just play it by ear. Getting the bikes back from New Zealand to Australia is yet for discovery. We haven't had any sort of investigations yet on the best way to do that, whether it's to fly them. It's not a short distance, but it's not a huge distance. But there's plenty of container ships going backwards and forwards between New Zealand and Australia. It's one of our greatest trading partners. So, I mean, there won't be a problem getting the bikes back, but we suspect they'll either land in Sydney or Melbourne. So we'll either have to time our return to meet the bikes as they get off the ship, or we'll just have to work some other. We'll just have to play that by ear, I think, depending on which country we're in. So obviously, as Chris said, we won't be just sitting around the airport in New Zealand. We will have to be, we're likely to be somewhere like Thailand, continuing the sort of world tour.
Yeah, I think the other thing, when we were looking at the cost effectiveness of hiring and or taking our own bikes abroad, it comes into play also that shipping them eventually back to Australia, we're still left with assets. We've still got 2 bikes that we can utilize and still continue using. And if we don't know everything about the BMWs by that stage, we'll be pretty poor motorcyclists, wouldn't we? So yeah, and I've got to be honest, I can't wait to get the new bikes. I can't wait for them to come through, get shipped out from Berlin. I really am excited about that.
So part of the reason for settling on BMW GSs is their 5-year warranty, and it's an unlimited warranty, and it's
Worldwide.
a worldwide
It's
warranty, which means that there's a small chance of anything happening with these bikes, and which comes under warranty, we can get that warranty servicing done. And also we're exploring the service packages, because under normal circumstances, people just probably wouldn't make use of the prepaid service packages because they don't do the high mileages in any given year. I mean, I was doing high mileage in the UK when I was commuting on an R1, and in 1 year I put on 20,000 miles. So a prepaid service package would have been useful then. But we are considering the service packages, the prepaid service packages, because I've had it confirmed by BMW that it will be honoured worldwide for participating dealerships. Now, what we have to find out is where those participating dealerships are, because you found something interesting out the other day about the United States and BMW servicing.
Yeah, here we can take out packages for 3 years or a 5-year package. From what I can see, the American BMW dealerships, they do similar packages for 1 and 3 years. They don't seem to have the 5-year package. So if we take a 5-year package out here, does that mean they're not going to be participating in that because it's for a 5-year, that they may not do? So that's got to be looked into. So we've got to plan ahead with that. We don't want to be paying out money in advance for the package to find when you roll up, they're looking for US dollars in their hands.
You're not going to honour it.
Yeah, and that's something we've got to consider. I mean, it's a lot of money. I mean, it is a lot of money, but it's a lot of, if it pans out well, it's actually going to give us some reassurance for the course of the trip, and that's for Europe, obviously, and UK as well. We're looking to.
So that is the thinking behind the ownership of a BMW F800 GSs. It was effectively our only choice. We didn't consider any of the other touring bikes, not because they're not good bikes. They are good bikes. We chose these bikes because of the 5-year warranty, worldwide warranty.
Also because the makeup of the bikes are such that they got 2 higher seats for both of us. We're short asses. So at the end of the day, it's awkward. We don't want to have bikes that you can't touch the ground very well with. We don't want that. We want something that we're comfortable with. Even down to the F800 GS and the F900 GS, they're the same engine. One's slightly more tuned than the other, although the engine is pretty similar. We're also finding that the F900, if you like, is that much taller. So it becomes virtually impossible for you to sit on. And I can sit on it and touch the floor reasonably well, but not exactly. I know there's lowering. You can put links in. You can do all sorts to them. I personally am not a great believer in altering the setup of the basic setup of a bike. I think it does invariably make it more difficult to ride, because you're changing some of the ergonomics of it, etc. So yeah, we've looked at it. Tenorés are too tall. We've looked at the Hondas, yeah, again, they're too tall in that respect. So we find the F800 GSs absolutely fit the bill for us. I can actually sit on them nearly flat-footed, which I like. I like the comfort of. Glynis, I think you're looking to a shorter seat.
I'm going to invest in a Wunderlich height reduced seat.
Comfort.
So I think the comfort seat takes it down by some 25 millimeters. When I did go out for a test ride on the bike at Moto Adelaide, they put a low seat on it, which took off 15 millimeters. And I know someone that has the BMW standard extra low seat, and it's like sitting on a board. And the thing I wanted to get away from, moving from the Kawasaki to the BMWs, was the pressure on the back of my thighs. I found that with having a really a harder seat than I would have liked, put pressure on the back of my thighs. So I didn't want to be sitting on a board for 2 years. And the Wunderlich seat has come highly recommended. So I hope it lives up to its reputation, because it's somewhere in the region of $1,000 here to buy that seat.
We've looked at the what we can do with the bikes, the adding, changing, etc. of items to it to make it, I think, firstly and foremostly more comfortable to ride, because you're going to be sat on those for hours on end.
Carrying capacity.
Yeah, and we're going to be carrying panniers and backpack duffels on the back of the bike.
As you've seen.
Yeah, so we're thinking, for us, these bikes are the ideal ones for us. It might prove otherwise. I think the proof of the pudding, as they say, is in the eating. So we'll wait and see and be able to answer that when we get on the road with them. But yeah, I think we've done so much research. The only thing is, I suppose, getting the items that we've got, it's made the bikes that much more expensive. Maybe some people, when they're looking at it, they might think it's too much outlay, if you like. Some people will stick with the basics. They want to go camping. They want to, they carry more stuff. Maybe people say, well, I don't want crash bars. I don't, we're trying to hit the happy medium for us, because we're going to be going on to different continents, and consequently different weather, different roads, and we've got to try and justify the bikes on these roads to make them as comfortable and as suitable as possible. And I think that's where we've gone with it. It might cost a bit more, but having said that, we think we're going the right way. And if we don't, we're quite happy to put our hands up and say, we wish we hadn't done this, or wish we hadn't done that.
So that's our plans, and at the moment, for sure, all we're doing is research, planning, graphic design, route planning, and purchasing everything that we need, and we're just kind of in a holding pattern, if you like, waiting for information on what's happening with the bikes in Berlin and when they're expected to leave Germany.
Yeah, it's interesting too. Every now and again, something crops up and we think, oh, we haven't thought of that. Or how do we get around this little problem? And it's little problems that we've seen. Instantly, one this morning, we were talking about our phones. So they're going to be an important part of the trip, if you like, our phones. They're our communication with the outside world and access to the internet and so on. And it's a case of what we're going to do with our phones, what phone numbers are going to use, what SIMs are we going to use, and then of course I'm a bit of a technophobe, I suppose, but at the end of the day there's a case of, well, you don't have to have one for each country. You can have some for regions, and then it's costs, and then it's the amount of data.
It's the speed. It's the speed of actually for the gigabytes that you can purchase, and the speed of upload and download, etc. And clearly, when we're doing videos, some of our videos are something like 10 gigabytes. So you can imagine how long that is going to take to upload the video so that you can watch our progress if it's only a really slow speed connection. So we've also got to think about where we stay if they've got high speed internet, but we can't rely on where we stay for that. We need to sort out some kind of package with an eSIM company which has got good coverage for everywhere we're going in Europe, Morocco and United States. Once we get back to Australia and New Zealand, it's a different story because we're on home turf. But we are going to need a reliable and high quality satellite service and phone service. And it's not as though we can trek around the world with a Starlink dish attached to our back in a rucksack.
Speak for yourself.
If only they would hurry up and make something really small that we can use overseas. That would be ideal, but we're at the mercy of eSIMs and eSIM travel companies. So
watch this space on that, because that's I think a little tiny topic all of its own. As it develops sort of daily, weekly, doesn't it? So we're really plugging into that to find out and look for the information, and as and where we get anything that's of real interest or explaining the setups that are there to do, we'll pass it on.
So at the moment, if anybody is using, we've purchased two Insta360 X5s, but they're still in the box. We haven't got a bike to play with in order to work out the positioning. We've seen, we also got the motorcycle package, so we've got the clamps which will fit them to the handlebars. I'm not convinced that's the best place for these cameras, because obviously they're a 360-degree view, and if the front view is just looking at the screen or a little gap between the screen and the mirror, then that's not ideal. I have seen a couple of people riding with a sort of a selfie stick type of setup where the camera is leaning forward. Again, I'm not convinced that's the right place either. We both need to be able to obviously turn the thing on and off, so it can't be out of reach. And ideally, it needs to be on the left-hand side where you're not, you can let go of the clutch, but it's harder to let go of the throttle. So if you're trying to do these things on the move. So if anybody's got any ideas for anything to fit to the front of the motorcycle, not the clamp on the handlebars, something else for those cameras, if you can let us know in the comments, please. I've looked at, I've done a Google search, etc., and it's come up with, AliExpress and all of them Temu type solutions, but I wouldn't know if they are practical solutions or how good the metalwork is, etc. So if anyone's got any ideas for where to put these cameras to give good views of us when we're talking on the comms to each other, and then also good views of the front, bearing in mind I probably am going to get a camera on a chin mount
as well,
on the helmet as well. But I do need a camera which looks back sort of towards Chris when he's talking, but also I can use the footage from his camera or from my camera to show either Chris in front of me or me in front of Chris.
Yeah, and I'm looking to maybe getting a taller screen on the front. It's got a very, very tiny screen, fitted standard, and I don't think that's going to be sufficient for protection from wind, rain, etc. So I'm looking to get something of that nature put in, and that will of course restrict viewing a little bit more going forwards in the middle in front of myself, so that's also got to be taken into consideration. Yeah.
So that's our update, and
not a lot.
Thanks for watching, and as we get more info and we get closer to the bike delivery, and we get more kit arriving and other stuff, then we'll update you. And we've got, as I say, the videos are going to be pretty short, I think, between now and when we're actually seeing the bikes for the first time at Moto Adelaide. because we don't intend to hire anything or go out on motorcycles between now and then. So we're just in a waiting game, but we can talk to you about, you know, paperwork, plans,
yeah.
companies that we might use, etc.
Things we find too. I think a lot of people realise that they think they've got a relatively broad knowledge of certain things, and then when you get down to the nitty-gritty of getting into specific topics and finding out things, you find out all sorts of little quirks and little advancements that we hadn't realised had been there, and when we do that, we can always pass those on to anybody else. So
for anybody else that's planning the big world adventure, which we've given the name. I'll put the logo on the screen for it. We're going to call ourselves Continental Drifters, and this is the Continental Drift. So we will be circumnavigating the globe, and so will both of our bikes. So
it's Continental Drifters, not incontinent drifters.
So people, thanks very much for watching. If you've enjoyed this video, please give us a big thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, and we'll see you in the next one.
Love you a long time.